We'll call the Barron County Board of Supervisors for Monday, September 16th, 2024 into order and have roll call. Funky, have you hit yours yet? No, mine doesn't do that. So we got 26 present. Yeah, it should be right. Okay, so there's 26 present and 3 absent. Supervisor Rogers, Supervisor Goodslick, and Supervisor Olson will not be attending tonight. Public notification.
Wendy Coleman, my executive assistant, has complied with Wisconsin open meeting requirements. Meeting agendas have been posted on electronic meeting notice boards located on the first and second floor of the Government Center and the first floor of the Justice Center. A hard copy of the meeting agenda has been posted in the county clerk's office, and she's verified the proper posting of this meeting. This is the Barron County Board of Supervisors scheduled for September 16th. This packet and the posting was completed on September 11th at 1:40 p.m.
Okay, the invocation will be by Pastor Tim Schmidt from the First Lutheran in Cumberland. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you for this invitation and this opportunity. I commend you for beginning your meeting with prayer and seeking that wisdom that is greater than our own. Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you seeking your guidance and your blessing for this meeting of our county board. We thank you for this beautiful community that you have given us here in Northwest Wisconsin. We thank you for the good and hardworking people who live here. And we thank you for those who have been called as leaders among us in our government to serve on this board of supervisors. We thank you for their willingness to serve and for their desire to do what is best for our county and its people. Bless their work and guide their decisions tonight, that they might benefit our common good and lead to the thriving and building up of us all. And in all that we do together, may we be reminded of your Son, Jesus Christ, who came not to be served, but to serve. May we in turn give ourselves in service and in care for others. For we pray in his name, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 4, special matters and announcements.
I had 3 things in the packet, but I did want the county board I want to make a special thank you to Market and Johnson from Eau Claire. Supervisor Turcott, Supervisor Olson were recently at the Justice Center where we were discussing putting in the new Sally Port, and there are about 270 deep wells that are used to water that's heating and cooling. My point in saying thank you to Market and Johnson, Patrick and Kathy at Market and Johnson, is they look for 3 days to try to find the original plans that are 24 plus years old. I also want to say thank you to Kate Yurko at DLR. They bought out KKE in 2010. She also went and looked for plans from there, and we can't find them. So we're trying, Craig and Pete, we're trying to find those plans, how deep those pipes are buried and how they come in. And so I wanted to say thank you to those 2 businesses. They didn't charge us. Market and Johnson looked for 3 days. DLR's looked for about 3 days to find those original plans and schematics, and don't know where they're at. So it's interesting times. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 5. Oh, you have a couple, all right?
I do, yep. If we could just do a quick reminder that everybody's time cards are due on the 5th of the following month. And if you don't have it turned in by the 5th, then it goes, and you were to turn it in later than the 5th, that's going to be processed the following month. So every once in a while I get a question as to, I didn't see my invoice or my timesheet this month. You might have turned it in after the 5th, and if that's the case, then it'll go on the next month's payroll if you turned it in. And then I believe it's also 60 days that you have to turn it in on.
And there's some that are getting, skirting the edges on that, so let's get the expenses in.
Please understand that the 60-day rule is not our rule. That's the rule of the Internal Revenue Service for having an accountable reimbursement plan. And anything over 60 days, they can penalize us or fine us, and then they can throw out all of your reimbursements and all of our non-taxable reimbursements. So that's why it's so important.
And then one more thing on my end, I'm seeing a totally different software program with open meetings tonight. So please be patient with your county clerk as she tries to work on her end with all the logistics of this. Your end should look identical to what it always has. My end, and then even Louis might look a little different. So just be patient with me tonight. I promise I'll go as fast as I can.
Okay, item number 5, approve the agenda. Motion by Supervisor Mosentine and seconded by Supervisor Thompson. Is there any concerns with the agenda? Not, all those in favor of that, let's vote.
Randy, I know you're virtual. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay, that passed by a majority of 26 yes and 3 absent. Item number 6, and I have to apologize, Jamie, that's ultimately my fault when I didn't give you enough time to introduce yourself and that, and I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but either way, I apologize, and could you give us a little introduction about yourself?
Okay, I have to be amplified. So I'm Jamie McCready. I'm a lifelong Barron County native, born in Cumberland. Called Turtle Lake home for about the last 16 years or so. My husband has sat on the village board of Turtle Lake for the last about approximately 10 to 12 years. I'm not sure which. I've worked at Cumberland Healthcare for 20 years. I've done many things within the county for sexual assault response team, community coordination response team, Northwest Wisconsin HERC, which is emergency preparedness stuff. What I do at Cumberland Healthcare now is I'm infection prevention. Yes, I was the infection prevention nurse during a pandemic. No, I don't ever want to do that again. I will retire. I don't care how old I am. And go bartend or something, who knows. And why I chose, I saw Jeff's post actually on Facebook. And being my husband has served for so long, and when my youngest son, who's now 11, was born, I kind of pulled away from some of the community things I was involved with, but he's 11 and he doesn't care if mom is home or not anymore. So I thought, well, gosh, I just, in my busy life, I need something more to do. So I decided to do this. I can say one of the other reasons is I'm appalled by our federal government. And feel that if I can affect change, at least locally, that I would like to do that. Because at this point, I'm not rich enough to go to the federal level, so.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for serving. Item number 7, approve the minutes of August 19th, 2024. Motion by Supervisor Bob Anderson, seconded by Supervisor Patty Anderson. Yeah, any concerns with the minutes? Seeing none, let's vote. Passed 25 yes. Okay, I don't know what, Jim Gore's. Yeah, but you can read the minutes. You can still vote if you want to, but that's okay. Well, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know you were in and out, and that didn't work too good last time, so. All right, so the minutes are approved. Item number 8, public comment. We do have one. Kathy, would you come up to the podium there? And Kathy, would you show Kathy how to get the mic going? Kathy, you need to state your name and address.
My name is Kathleen Minteri, And my address is 2545 27.5 Street, Rice Lake, Wisconsin. I'd like to address the board tonight concerning our township, Cedar Lake Township. I'm a resident of Barron County and also of Cedar Lake Township. And we were approached by Four Corners Fire Department and EMS to ask if they would be able to get a contract with us to do all of our residents for our emergency services needs. So in doing so, we've been looking back at some material and some situations that have occurred, and it appears that there are several incidents that have occurred that seem to make the situation rather difficult for any of our county services or emergency management services to be adequately taken care of. And we're just trying to find out if there's any way that we can help that, or if there's anything that the board has in mind for that. We know that this entails several different aspects: our call center, the radio dispatch, the towers. All of these things have to do with whether the right emergency services goes to the right address. I was looking over a quarterly report that came out, I believe this was October of last year, and it states that Barron County is in the process of upgrading its county-wide radio network infrastructure by incorporating a simulcast system, which has several benefits. And I won't go into all the benefits, but it said for fire and EMS, there are 8 different towers which share common frequency. Users need to select the closest tower to effectively communicate with dispatch. This requires 8 different channels to be programmed for users of the radio. If there are multiple departments out in different parts of the county, it is common that users are not able to hear others on the channel in different parts of the county, and users often talk on top of one another. Dispatch outbound, it is not uncommon that dispatch has to wait to page responders to an emergency because the channel is in use by responders that are on scene and coordinating other incidents. Normal day-to-day response coordination, this frequency would be used by all departments that are assigned to less critical things. And then there's a channel 3 for major incidents and coordination of pre-planned events. So I'm just wondering if the county board has been aware of many of the different problems that there are within our system, and if there are any plans for change, upgrade, communication between providers of the cells who have the towers, that it gets bounced off frequently when there's a call and it's from Barron County.
Kathy, the 3 minutes are up.
Okay,
Now,
so
and-
that's it. Thank
Yes,
you.
and they aren't allowed to respond to you, and I'm
Okay.
not, I'm supposed to not do that either, but I violate that rule when you have usually, I shouldn't say legitimate concern, but anyway, what you're saying has been addressed. Mike Judy, our local, what is Mike's title? Emergency Management Director, is working hard on this. That's simulcast. There's 2 different systems that he's working on, and we did have issues with that. And Motorola has had some issues, and they're in the process of getting that all situated. But it may be by the end of the year, when you say, Chris, that we'll have it. So they are working hard on it, because what you said did happen with things, and with the new system, all people are going to be able to communicate with each other and not overlap. And I believe the local jurisdictions, the fire departments and ambulances that don't have adequate radio systems will have those. So everybody's going to be working together, and it'll also, as you transition from one tower to the other, it automatically moves itself, where before you had to log into the next tower and that. So hopefully this will resolve any issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 9, the presentation, the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Scott Allen is its Executive Director. Hey, Scott.
Ooh, there we go. No, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. one who is well versed in all things regional planning commission. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak before you here this evening. Trying to take too much of your time. I know you have a busy agenda with budget discussions such as well. Amanda Veith is with me, who is our lending specialist with Regional Business Fund, and she'll be tagging in here later on in the presentation. But wanted to give you an update, especially during election year, meaning county board election year, when there may be more opportunity for some newer county board supervisors, including 7 on our 21-member regional planning commission itself. So we had 1/3 new commissioners this spring as well. So we want to take this time just once a year to come in and give you an update on some of the projects that have been going on specifically in Barron County, but also kind of walk you through real quickly kind of who we are and what we do. So go to the next slide. Regional planning commissions, of which there are 9. I'll show a map here momentarily. We were created over 50 years ago already by state statute 1971. So we're kind of operate directly under state statute 66.0309 if you want to read through that. Maybe not compelling reading, but certainly interesting just in terms of how the regional planning commissions are structured in the state. We kind of work in a lot of different areas, and those are listed there on the slide. And we'll go to the next slide. There's that map in terms of the 9 different regional planning commissions. And yes, there are a few kind of around and in between Madison and Milwaukee that are not or have perhaps never been members of regional planning commissions, but essentially north of the Dells, kind of like to call that out, everything is within one of those 9 regional planning commissions. Again, we're 9th only alphabetically, but we are first to Barron County because you're one of our 7 counties that we serve here in West Central Wisconsin. So we'll go to the next slide. Again, as I mentioned, there's a 21-member commission that kind of serves in a similar capacity as the county board supervisors. Again, those appointments are made by the county boards in all 7 counties, so 3 per county. There's also an executive committee, 1 from each county, again, within that same membership. We'll go to the next slide. Specific to Barron County, you can see there 3 county board supervisors, Supervisor Anderson, Supervisor Fowler, and Chair Oki. As you see there by Louis' name, there's an asterisk. It means he is serving as your executive committee member, specifically as the vice chair for this 2-year term. So every even numbered year, kind of coinciding with county board elections, our commission also kind of revisits and appoints and votes for the executive committee as well. So for this next 2 years till 2026, Chair Oki is serving as our vice chair. So we'll move to the next slide, which shows the staff that's comprised of the Regional Planning Commission. As I mentioned, Amanda will be speaking here momentarily. She's highlighted there in green of the 3 Regional Business Fund staff people. And again, Regional Business Fund is a separate kind of a nonprofit housed within the Regional Planning Commission. The blue are the actual staff planners on staff. There are 9 planners. And then also administrative staff, myself, as well as office manager and finance manager. So 15 in total, again, serving the commission. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So just generally, what is the goal? This is kind of a common goal for all the regional planning commissions, but specific to West Central Regional Planning. We assist units of government in planning for physical, social, and economic development needs of the region. So we do this primarily in 3 ways: serve as coordinating organization between federal and state agencies. We assist units of government working on issues that occur at the regional level, and we provide technical assistance directly to individual units of government. I'll give some examples of that here in a moment. So we'll go to the next slide. We can show how regional planning services are summarized into 4 general areas: economic development, transportation, community development, and then conservation mapping. And we break those down on the next slide with economic development and transportation. Regional economic development planning coordination in a general sense. And Amanda will talk a little bit about revolving loan funds through regional business fund, as well as, again, grant administration. Seem to be doing quite a bit of that as of late throughout the region. Transportation, too, I'll talk a little bit about this momentarily. Some safe routes to school plans. We've been doing a few of those in Barron County and around the region, as well as pedestrian bicycle facilities planning. We'll talk about that here shortly as well. Next slide highlights community development and conservation mapping. Community development is kind of a core service that we provide. Specifically, again, mentioning that grant write administration. Talked about previous speakers talked about emergency preparedness, hazard mitigation planning, where you provide updates to every county hazard mitigation plan in our region. And we also do outdoor recreation plans I'll highlight here in a moment. Also do quite a bit with mapping. So we have technical services that provide geographic information systems, or GIS mapping, throughout the region. And then specifically too, in the next slide, you'll see that long list of, hopefully everybody can read that, but I'll read through it here quickly as well. Barron County projects that we've been working on and are in the works since the last time we were before you, about this time last year. I'll show some pictures here. With that first one in particular, we staff the stormwater outreach coordinator position for our Rain to Rivers of Western Wisconsin. They kind of serve as a housing of various stormwater management education and services. And specific to Barron County, City of Rice Lake is a member of this group specifically, but we do projects throughout the entire region. So that we helped provide funding for 2 mini grants for the new Auburn High School FFA Club. I'll show some photos here momentarily. We assist with the West Central Wisconsin Rail Coalition, supporting future passenger rail service in the region. It's not as much in this area up into Barron County, but some of the maps at the state level show some interconnectivity with bus service too. That you may have seen some news over the last few months. Regional rail running from the Chicago, Milwaukee area all the way up to the Twin Cities. And then in coordination with Public Service Commission, we provide administration outreach to the region's broadband implementation group. I know Minister French has perhaps brought that before you on various occasions, talking about some upcoming funding and expansion throughout the state, in particular here in Barron County. We provide annual county-specific economic profiles. So this will, I'll call out the folder that's at your each of your seats. In that folder, we have on the left side is the economic profile updated just in May for Barron County. Also have an informational brochure about West Central Regional Planning. And on the right side, again, I'll turn that over to Amanda here momentarily, is information on Regional Business Fund. And then also our cards, business cards for both me and Amanda. A couple others before I show a few photos and then turn over to Amanda. We're launching an update to the City of Cumberland Outdoor Recreation Plan. I mentioned outdoor recreation plans earlier. That's one service we provide pretty routinely throughout the region, updating and finalizing the update to Barron County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Also provided a County Human Services Transportation Coordination Plan, which, yes, that's not a term we made up. That is definitely a federal terminology in play, but it's something that's required at the county level through typically through human services to provide things such as senior transportation for health services. And so that's something that is required. And that's a lot of the purpose for many of these plans is to provide these plans to access federal and state funding. So that's kind of where we come in between local governments and the communities that they serve, and then into that state and federal realm. And so we kind of come in putting these plans and grants together. We're completing the Barron County Bike and Ped Plan. As I mentioned, Safe Routes to School plans. We do those throughout the region. Produced one for Turtle Lake end of last year. And we're working with Rice Lake in an update to their one that is already 16 years old, believe it or not. Their Safe Routes to School plan for Rice Lake schools. We're also anticipating final approval from FEMA for Village of Elmina Community Safe Room grant for almost $1 million. That was something we've been working on. It takes quite a bit of time to get those things in the works, and we're hoping to hear something here shortly. And then finally, we completed the City of Barron Outdoor Rec Plan. I'll show a photo here. The next slide. This is, should we quiz everybody, see if they know what this is? But actually, this is the Anderson Park and city of in the city of Barron. So this is looking southeast across the park. So we don't own a drone, but one of our staff members has a drone. So some of the fun photos that we're able to take nowadays include this photo of Anderson Park. One thing specific that maybe I didn't call out in the previous slide, but the next slide is Barron County Crash Report. This is something we do for all the counties as well at the request. So we try to update this pretty regularly. I say regularly every couple of years. And we just did this one here this year. So all of the towns, cities, and villages in the county, we take all of the crash data and we map that and then kind of show kind of these data analytics for each of those. So this is an example. I told Supervisor Patty Anderson, she's new to our commission. I was going to quote, pick on her, but only because as a good example in terms of kind of where she's at, this is some of the information we can provide and do provide to each of the individual municipalities throughout each of the counties. So this is one, again, showing the different types of crashes. Sadly, one fatality, vehicle fatality, and then again, kind of highlighting those hot spots of where perhaps, again, towns, villages, cities, the county may be interested in perhaps investigating a little bit further and looking at some road improvements, especially at different intersections. So that's just a sample of that. In better news, moving on to some of the work that was done with the Range of Rivers, here's a before picture with the New Auburn High School. And I had to double check the map. The New Auburn High School is actually in Barron County. It's not in Chippewa County. So I'm sure you all knew that. That was kind of a aha for me. I'm like, oh, that's true. So there's a before picture. Go to the next slide. We'll show the after picture. Again, this is some grant funding that we were able to provide to the FFA Club to put in this rain garden to help with some of the drainage and stormwater in this area. So I'll close with some of our budget information as the next slide shows kind of where our financing comes from. You're talking about budget today. Here's our current year budget. About 17%, that kind of top left wedge, about 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock there, is what we utilize from levy. So that's kind of your direct contribution or part of the 7 counties and their direct contribution to our budget each year. The wedge right below that, the purple wedge of 34%, so about a third of our budget comes from contracted services. So those are things such as, thinking here, outdoor recreation plans, for example, are doing for the city of Cumberland, is coming from contracted services. But the levy, what that does as well is help match some of those funds. So it's not necessarily a 100% cost burden upon municipalities for those types of services. There's, through the county levy, some offset in matching. So the next page speaks more specifically, next slide I should say, to Barron County. So had moderate increases here up to 2025 is what you expect to see from our invoice we will send to Mr. French in January of $32,000. So it's about 3%, just a little over 3% increase. The commission votes every year at their March meeting for what the following year, already in March, so you know what to expect as you work in your budget. They already vote in March for that future year what that levy amount will be, and an increase is usually proposed. During COVID, there actually was a decrease, but now restoring some of those funds. So it's 70% of our budget now. Prior to COVID, it was about 20%. So kind of fluctuating between 16 to 20%. And the increase was 3% overall for the entirety of all 7 counties. So it's based on equalized value. So not every county is seeing the same increase necessarily, but yours is right in line with that overall increase at 3%. So the next slide just kind of highlights the benefits of regional planning. As I mentioned, we are a public entity, so we do operate with that public and fiscal accountability to local governments, yourself included. We offer that neutral forum, so again, we're non-regulatory. We just kind of stand in the gap there to assist that conversation, exploring In resolving intergovernmental issues, we provide an opportunity to partner and leverage funds, and Amanda will talk a little bit about that with Regional Business Fund in particular. And we maintain that staff of professionals I shared with you in that organizational chart who have decades of technical programmatic expertise. As I mentioned, we fill in gaps too in planning that can't be met by smaller governmental units who don't have the resources to provide that kind of staff level on a consistent basis or a full-time basis. So we assist in those ways as well. And we act as repositories for a lot of that data and information. And finally, kind of what else you should know about us in the next slide. Again, we share your commitment to the well-being of our region, counties, and communities. We have the tools and expertise to drive progress for the region, counties, and communities. As I mentioned, we bring decades of experience and deep-rooted connections to the region. We serve a public mission, prioritizing the highest community impact. We efficiently leverage funding that we receive to maximize benefits. We take on challenging tasks that others may avoid. Not so much in Barron County, thank you for that. But perhaps in some of the other roles we play, serving, for example, as a metropolitan planning organization, we staff that for the Chippewa-Eau Claire MPO. You can imagine there's some challenging tasks there. We operate with multi-jurisdictional missions serving diverse communities. So again, we like to say we play in everybody's sandbox as we're invited to do so. And we offer unique services that are unavailable elsewhere. So again, like those outdoor recreation plans, safe routes to school plans, those types of plans that just aren't regularly available outside of that service. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda, and then Mr. Chair, if there are questions, if you'd like to take some time with those, we could certainly do that.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. So, as Scott said, I'm Amanda Veith. I'm the lending specialist for the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. My time is mostly devoted to working on the contract that the Regional Business Fund has with the Regional Planning Commission. So, a little bit about us is the Regional Business Fund, or RBF as I'll call it, is a nonprofit that was created by the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission to administer business revolving loan funds. And the nonprofit RBF is staffed by the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Next slide. The Regional Business Fund has a 9-member board of directors, as you'll see here. You'll see Pam Fall is Barron County's representative. Thank you, Pam. That's 1 from each of our 7 counties and then 2 at-large members. Next slide. The Regional Business Fund offers low-interest business loans to provide an economic benefit to the region. So RBF loans are flexible and can be used for a variety of business financing needs. The listed programs do not compete with traditional financing, instead can provide an additional source of financing when needed. So in your packet, we do have our annual report and a flyer of all of our programs that are listed here. So you can contact us, look at our website, or look at that brochure. I'm not going to go through each one of them in depth, but I am going to show you some examples of businesses that have utilized our programs. Next slide. Since inception, RBF has assisted 164 businesses in Barron County. 92 of those were startups. We did 178 loans and awarded just over $7.6 million, created 504 jobs, and then leveraged almost $48 million in private funding. Next slide. And then here are some of the examples of businesses that you may recognize. Northwood Cycle is up in Rice Lake. They were established in March of 2023 to operate a full-service bicycle shop in downtown Rice Lake, Wisconsin. They purchased the old Libby's Party Store on Main Street and renovated inside and out. They stock bikes, apparel, accessories, parts, tools, and everything cycle-related. They also created a space in the front of their building that houses Woodland Coffee. The business is owned by Allison Hall, Alex Wolf, and Tim Bradley, friends and professional musicians of Copper Street Brass. They utilized the Regional Business Fund facade loan in the amount of $60,000 that was used for their exterior renovations. Next slide. The next one is also in Rice Lake. It's Christine's Dance Company. Christine's Dance Company was formed in 2008 and has been a part of the Rice Lake community for 16 years, teaching dance to kids 3 to 18 years old. They purchased another building in downtown Rice Lake, and they are in the process of renovating it into a state-of-the-art dance studio slated to be done in January of 2025. It will feature 5 spacious studios that provide high-quality dance education to area students. And each May, they host an end-of-the-season showcase at the Rice Lake High School Auditorium, if you want to check that out. They used $94,000 revolving loan fund alongside bank financing, and we were used to purchase the building and assist with those renovations for them. Next slide. And last example I have is Island Ice. That one is in Cumberland, Wisconsin. That was created in February of 2020 by Larry Savina, who you'll see in the picture there, with his son, Bo Savina. It was a small ice production operation connected to the Island Wine storefront. They started with a self-service ice machine in a small facility to serve a limited number of customers, and then as competition left the area, there was the opportunity to grow and expand the market. So he built a new ice production facility on the property, and he increased his production and his service area. They utilized $114,000 revolving loan fund alongside bank financing to purchase the equipment that you see in that picture, and then some. You can see the bagger and the conveyor and the ice machine. Next slide. And then with that, I'd like to recognize the contributions that everyone in Barron County and the citizens make to our organization, including RBF board member Pam Fall and the rest of our loan committee members who you see listed here: Tim Gerber, Adam Skinner, Rod Norby, Carrie Sanford, Bruce Markin, and Dave Lentz. And then everyone in the Barron County Economic Development Corporation, Dave Armstrong, and other economic development professionals that spread the word about the Regional Business Fund and our services that we offer. And again, thank you for your time.
And I believe Jeff French works extensively with the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning, and Scott, and Dave Armstrong with the Economic Development Corp for Barron County works hand in hand with the RBF. So there's a lot of good programs that you have, and Dave knows how to utilize them. And so thank you very much for all your efforts. Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, you've done a great job with your presentation. Thank you very much, and enjoy the evening.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Item number 10, the 2025 budget on the first draft. Is that you, Jeff?
Is this on? Yep. Thanks, Louis. So in your packet, I put how we presented to executive, and I want to be very fair and open. So the board here's what we presented to executive. So this is in your packet if you want to follow along that. We're going to go pretty much line by line through this, and stop me if you have a question. And Jody will jump in. And so what you see, the first thing that you see there is, this is what we call our summary tax allocation spreadsheet that gets us down to the levy that we're going to potentially levy along with the mill rate. I want to explain to the board that when you look at the debt service fund, the second line, $1,996,495, if you see that number, I want to make sure that we understand that that does not include the debt service on the shredder and material handler, or excuse me, easy for you to say, shredder and material handler. We do not have that amortization schedule. We have a letter on August 2nd, and the money should have been deposited today. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that. So when we look at the capital improvements, you're going to see quite a little jump to 1.933 million. That is, we're going to explain that. We'll just jump down here for a borrowing, because we're going to explain this in a minute. We've taken over approximately 2 million out of our fund balance, and we're going to replenish that with a short-term note, or it's going to be brought forward to this county board on October 21st to refill that with a short-term note from Sterling Bank at 5.5%. One payment on February 1st of 2026. We'll talk about that in a minute. I do want to mention, as the county has done for many years, we take 1/3 of our fund balance of our sales tax, and we apply a third, and a third. So whatever fund balance that we have, we don't take all of it to drop the mill rate. We take a third and allocate a third over the years. And you can see as our sales tax has increased, our fund balance has increased, and we've been able to keep our mill rate level. Or actually, it's the lowest. I looked it up. It's going to be the lowest mill rate, I think, since 2009 or 2004. Jody, when it was day off, I looked at that. So that's reduces our levy. So when you look at sales tax collected, you take what we project that we're going to have. They're projecting a 1.3% increase. I don't know what we raised it here. We were very conservative, but this is roughly what, about $6.2 million that reduces the levy. And I'll say it and say it. It's no longer the property taxes that drive the county budget. When you're only getting a 1% increase in net new construction, it's sales tax. Sales tax is what's driving the county budget and has for many years. Also, we're one of the very few counties where our sales tax continues to increase. Some of them are flat or going negative. I also want to explain to the board that the $233,000, we are taking at this time, the projected increase in our self-funded health insurance is $466,000. We have approximately $3.4 million of fund balance in that fund. So we're going to split the difference here. We'll increase our operations and pay for that and take the balance of the 233 out of fund balance. But I have a methodology, and I want you to listen very closely. I explained this to executive, and I believe they really understood it. When Tim Deaton was here, he explained that we have a $50,000 stop loss. We have approximately 5 events totaling $500,000. If we were to if we were to raise our stop loss from 50 to 100,000, we would potentially get no increase in our stop loss, which means the 466 would go away. My methodology, however, is I want to leave that here because this would then pick up potentially 2 $100,000 claims. I want to stop right this. Do you understand what I'm trying to do there? If we go from $50,000 of stop loss to $100,000 of stop loss, we'll have potentially $500,000 we'll have to pick up in claims. If that results in a 0 increase, we'll cover $466,000 of that. What I want to do is we want to get, well, I want to build the fund balance or cash reserves in our self-funded health insurance. I want to get that up to a year's worth of premiums at some point. Fund balance applied. This is the $2 million on the note. Jody, could you show that letter? Is that, or am I out of place? Is that gonna, okay. So it would be, yep. So here's the commitment from Sterling Bank that we have. They are typing up the loan papers for approval by the county board. It will take a 3/4 affirmative vote of the board. So we're looking at a $2.5 million loan. We can take any money that we want after the county board has approved it. We'll probably take that money sometime in late November or early December. Is that correct, Jody, about when you want it? That will get our fund balance back up to 33%. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It's a 5.5% fixed. I did ask them with the realization that the feds are probably going to lower the interest rates on Wednesday, 0.25%. I asked if they could come down 0.25%. They said no. They've already factored in the 0.25%, and they've shared with me that because we have a A-, we have a AA- rating. AA, sorry. We have a AA bond rating in the open market. They've given us a pretty good rate, and this is 0.5% less than the state trust fund. They're at 6%. It'll be a single pay. It matures on 2/1. So would you go back? Any questions on that? Go back to the fund balance. What the $2 million would do is it would be put in the capital improvement capital outlay fund and would bring our fund balance up to 31%. We try to always keep our fund balance, at least Jody and I try, to keep it between 30 and 33%. We want to do that because if the board approves the expansion at the Justice Center for the Sally Port, we will need to go out for an open market borrowing to do that. At that time, we would borrow and pay off this short-term note and borrow, I would assume, over a 20-year period for the Sally Port. We want the 31% because when you go through the open market rating, they watch your fund balance. And over a period of how many years, it's been between about 30 and 38%. Consistently, I believe they said 8 to 12 years. We want to show that consistency. Showing consistent fund balance says to the rating services, we have cash flow and we all know how to make a budget work. Say it again. It's cash flow, it's budgeting, and it's consistency. They look for consistency. Diane.
Okay, so the backfill is 2 million. Did the note say 2.5?
Yes, we're going to set the 2.5 for two reasons. Well, one primary reason is Steve is, depending on how this goes with the HVAC at the campus, 500,000 for maybe you doing pack boilers and not doing the 2.6 million, but doing maybe pack boilers. Also, the potential of doing windows at the over here at the Ag building, which are original from the 80s. Yes. Yep, but we're not going to use that on payroll. We're going to use it on things you can touch, feel, see, things like that. Okay, continuing on this. So what happens here is you get revenues to be applied to the levy. This gets us a debt service and operating levy of $22,171,686. Then you add in the county library and the out-of-county Act 150 and Act 420 payments. And these are going up 1% each year. I want to tell you, however, these are appropriations. There's nothing locked in stone that you have to increase these. This is at the will of the Barron County Board of Supervisors to increase these percentages. It's in the 5-year plan, but that 5-year plan is not in stone. You can make adjustments here, okay? I'm not saying you have to, I'm saying it's a choice. You will see, I talked about fund balance. Well, we have the most strict, Wisconsin has this most strict levy limit calculations in the nation. We can raise our levy $309,197. My point is, again, if it wasn't for our sales tax, we would really be hurting, okay? So we're still a little bit under our levy. Equalized valuation has went up again about 14%. The library valuation will follow. You can see that where mill rate would drop from 350, or our mill rate would go from 356 to 362. But this is still one of the lowest mill rates in more than a decade. $32 for our recycling surcharge, keeping that level, to keep our recycling plant operating. So before I go off that, any questions on this spreadsheet? Randy.
Yes, Jeff. So just back to, we're going to borrow money to put in our fund balance to get the 31%. That's basically, that is short-term borrowing. I mean, the credit agency is going to look at it and say, you borrowed money to get to 31%.
We're gonna put it in our capital improvements, capital outlay plan, and we also have referenced, and we'll get to that in a minute. We've referenced the resolutions that said that we could backfill that. So that will be in our favor. You got to unmute him. Hang on a second.
We're going to treat it like a line of credit, and then when we get the Sallyport loan, we're going to pay this back.
Correct.
All right.
Yep. And they know that. Yep. All right. So, going on, budget changes, and there'll be more between September and October. This is a preliminary budget. These are things that have happened. We've increased sales tax. We talked about the 233. We have money from restorative justice we haven't used. We use the interest from the opioid. We'll use, this is the interest. We can use the interest in our general operating budget. We cannot use the opioid money in any other area other than allowed by the 19 pages that they come out with. Abby's been very gracious. We've cut back some of our capital requests for the campus. We've cut extensions, cut things out of their budget. We've reallocated some grants, and the borrowing, that gives us where we would be. Remember though, this money was taken out of fund balance to begin with. If we'd have never touched that money, we wouldn't be here to have to borrow in the first place. We took money out, show those. Jody, can you go to fund balance? Or we've taken money out of the fund balance for the communications upgrade, 1.5, oh, you went just a little too far, 1.5 million. The Sallyport study and the dispatch. So we've taken 1,936,429 on these different resolutions out of fund balance. Had we borrowed for those, or we wouldn't be borrowing now, because these are long lived things that are going to go more than a year. So if we wouldn't borrow and backfill, we'd have a fund balance of 24%, which is 1% below what the rating agencies want you to be at. I think it may be even violation of one of our bond covenants. Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it, at 24? Yeah, because we have a bond covenants with the highway that we have to maintain a minimum of 25%. So the 2 million will get us up to 31%, but it justifies, this gives a very detailed explanation to the rating agencies of where that money's going. Questions on that? All right, personnel requests. These are things the board makes a decision on. Out at the recycling and out at the waste energy, these would not affect the property tax levy. The combining the two positions because, at the aging ADRC kitchen, we have a person who will be in the future retiring, and we want to make sure that we have coverage. We want to have good meals. And the court security officer, which would be out front at the Justice Center, that would be 100% on the tax levy. So you can see of the 294, 136 is on the levy, and 146 or 157,000 is not. That's the personnel request, down substantially from the last 2 years on personnel requests. Contingency fund. We always budget money, something for a contingency, because something always comes up during the year. We do have employee payouts, retirements, and resignations. We've had, the last few years, we've had quite a few, about 22. Hopefully that slows down a bit now. Health insurance, person can have a qualifying event in their health, in their life, and they can change plans. That runs about 75,000. Our health insurance is budgeted at 6.95%. You can see the opposite side of the 233 over here. Budgeting a 3.5% COLA, which when looking at the CPI and inflation over the last 12 months, I think 3.5% is a good solid number. We have a little bit of a market study here. That will go up from 10 to 15,000, and holding open vacancies. We've done that for 2024, been successful with that. And that's a way to save on our budget. So that would be money that would go into the contingency. Questions? Okay, I've discussed borrowings, I've discussed capital improvements. The HVAC, you'll see that I haven't budgeted for that. I'm still of the mindset that kind of maybe slow that down a little bit till we know what's going to happen with the campus. And the property committee is going to take that up at their October meeting. Excuse me, turning the page. Yes. We started this in 2024, Jim, because our budget's so tight, and with the number of turnovers and employees that we've had, people leaving, we've been able to make it work. Jody and I have been talking about doing some changes and maybe cutting that down to 4 weeks, because that's probably more of an accurate one. This really got us here because of holding open we had a long recruitment for a position in land services. That really helped that. Okay, Sallyport. It's not anywhere here, but the Sallyport is something that the timeline is working on. We're working on the budget for the Sallyport tomorrow. I want to tell you my discussions with Sean Lentz, our financial advisor from Ellers. He's of the opinion, and I know Randy's listening here, but he's supportive of the short-term note Because if the feds drop 0.25% in September, there's talk they'll drop another 0.25% in December. He's recommending, and I agree with that, I don't use the word recommending. His inkling is that we might see a 0.5% cut in interest rates between now and say March when we have to borrow the money. And 0.5% on what we're gonna borrow is a big chunk. So we're kind of sort of pumping, we aren't kind of sort of, we are pumping the brakes on some of this borrowing. Okay, ag building improvements, we've talked about that. I do want to just mention a couple things. I want to go back to the library budget and I want to hit a couple things on the library budget. There are 3 appropriations the county board makes. They are appropriations. An appropriation is money given by the board for specific events. One is the library. The second is the fair. The third is the museum. Each one of these are appropriations that are given. Each of these, the library is exempt from the levy limits. The library is exempt from the levy limits. They have a strong lobby in Madison. We are not. The fair and the museum are specifically exempt in state statute that the county board can make an appropriation and give them money. Other nonprofits, you cannot do that. So there are specific exemptions in the law. I say all that because you go to the changes, please. When you're asking department heads to cut, you got to think about this. You're asking department heads to cut, and we've cut a lot. In the last couple of years, we've cut over $1 million. At some point, you got to share the pain, folks. It's that straightforward. All right, questions for me. The next event will be, who does? Randy. We have time, can you unmute him?
Jeff, a couple things. So are you saying or asking the board to take a look at those 3 and make cuts to those budgets?
I don't know much more I can say about the library. The library is an appropriation. They're all 3 appropriations. I can tell you flat out, I've told the fair and the museum, do not expect any more money until after 2030. We raised the museum, excuse me, we did not. Yes, we did. We raised the museum from 32,000 to 39,000. They asked last year for more money and I told them no, and I've told them no again this year. Don't ask. The fair, we raised from 40,000 to 50,000. I've talked to several people on the fair, and they're like, hey, we're really appreciative the county gave us the extra 10,000. We know you got a tough budget year. Please don't cut us, but if you do, we understand where you're at, but support us if we have a bad year next year. I said, absolutely. I talked to the board chairman about it the day the phone call. He said, absolutely, he'd support that. That's my answer, man.
And then the last thing, I mean, you know, the last couple of years we have gone to the same department heads. How come I don't see the highway department on here?
We do use their fund balance at the highway department to buy equipment, and we're using that money for STP projects, surface transportation projects. And that's very important because whether we put in the STP, and generally speaking, if we put in 20%, the feds will put in 80, or we put in and it's a 50-50 match. So I just ask you to think, for example, if we didn't have the money for fund balance, we would not have gotten the bridge built on County Trunk Highway T for 4.5 years. But
No, I
because we had STP
understand
money
that.
set aside, we got it done in a year. Got to think about that. That's true.
Yeah, but they deal with a lot of funds out there. And when you take a look at some of our departments, and I'll just take a look at extension, land conservation, zoning, those are not big budgets. And, you know, every year they seem to ante up. And I don't see the highway department in terms of cuts or anteing up. I mean, obviously we have to get things done, but never see them on there. Just a
Yeah.
point.
No, so typically we've been increasing their budget, their levy about 100,000 every year. That barely covers their COLAs for that year. There's health insurance, there's all of their operational costs, things like that. They overall for the levy that they get, it's very tight in comparison. And actually, if the STP projects, those are usually funded by the general fund. But what where they would have to cut would be in county road construction. So there wouldn't be, if they don't have any extra money, then roads are not getting done.
I'm done. Questions for me? Seeing none?
I have,
Yes.
Jeff, just, is there any kind of separate off-page, off-project with the UWECBC potentials there as far as what would it do from an impact on the budget if childcare does go through? What would it do if the school district does come through? What would it do on the other side if, heaven forbid, Madison closes the campus down? Are you going to do any kind of separate sheet for that shows what those projections might have an impact on this budget? Because those are real things that could be happening this coming year.
Item number 16 on today's agenda is going to discuss some of that.
But I do want to answer that question, though. I mean, if we were to get closed down, that's the problem I'm struggling with, Craig, is if we were to get closed down, we would get money from the state of Wisconsin. Otherwise, we're not getting closed down. We have to do all this on our own. So let's say that's your point number 2. Now to your point number 1. If the Rice Lake Area School District was to take over and create a K4 and take over the gym, we wouldn't have to, that would save the UW system because they would be paying for the utilities on that, and we wouldn't have to be paying for upkeep for like windows, doors, roof, stuff like that. So it wouldn't be an immediate effect, but eventually it would. So I hope I answered your question. I'm not
I
getting
don't think it's not going to affect this next year's budget is what it boils down to. And that's why we're going to have that community meeting of the whole. So everybody, all the board members can be up to speed because half of you don't know what we're talking about here.
I'm
So
going to try to not have a committee meeting of the whole. I'm going to try to explain it all tonight because I don't think we're
Oh,
going to
really?
have a lot of information on that night. We'll
Okay.
have a chance to-
all right, Supervisor Banks.
Jeff, back to sales tax. We use quite a bit of sales tax to reduce our levy, right?
Correct.
Now, is that a mandate from the state, or is that something that we just do?
We are the oddity of all the sales tax people. That's a great question. In 1992, we instituted the sales tax in 1986. In 1992, there is a Attorney General's opinion that separates out Barron County. We have to reduce our general property tax levy. There's been court cases, for example, Door County won their court case that they could take their sales tax and do it for road improvements and fixed assets. We can't. It has to go against our general levy.
It was what was originally mandated, that you take it out of the general, reduce your general levy. And Barron County's always done what we're supposed to do. Some other counties didn't, and there's been lawsuits, but we're doing what we're supposed to do. It's mandated. Yes.
Well, I think the public needs to really know that we reduce the levy with some sales tax.
It's as obvious, it's a revenue source on our, I don't know, obviously more obvious we can make it.
Well,
Yeah.
Any other questions on the budget? Bun? Or Supervisor Hanson, I mean?
Can we add a sales tax to the VRBOs and the?
They already pay sales tax. If they're a VRBO and they're going through a Verbo or another one, they already have to pay sales tax. Otherwise, they don't get that. We can't stop what you call the wildcatters. We can't stop them. We do try to provide that information to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue yearly, but I don't know how fast their auditors respond.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll go on
Can
to
I just
item.
talk about something? That's an interesting thing, though. Sometimes we should follow the lead of other states. California, they charge extra for verbos because it's huge out there in Northern California. And you know what they do with the money? It's dedicated to roads and schools. And it's a 0.75%. And at 37.5%, I think it's a 0.75%. And I don't know how they split it. I've got the article up in my office, but they do a little out of the box thinking because they look at the people that do the verbos in the short terms and they have to pay sales tax and have to pay a little extra. It's not a lot, but it goes towards roads, and these people are coming in and uses roads and services. So it's
I hear you,
never-
Jeff, but the last state I want to follow is California.
Just
All right.
one more point on that. Rice Lake charges a room tax for the hotels in town. But we're not doing that for the VRBOs. And the Rice Lake Tourism lives on that room tax.
True. Okay, item number 11, zoning ordinance amendments. Can I get a motion to approve that? Motion by Supervisor Heller, seconded by Supervisor Efforts. Is there any concerns with that rezoning? Seeing none, let's vote. That passed by a majority vote of 26 yes, 3 are absent. Item number 12, now this requires a 2/3 vote, which means 22 supervisors have to vote yes in order for this resolution to pass. Excuse me. Resolution authorizing expenditure authority of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA dollars for Barron County Housing Authority apartment complex rehabilitations not to exceed 3.5 million. As Jeff had in his update, we've approved that 3.5 million. What's happening is the Housing Authority is incurring expenses relative to the rehab. I believe we paid 160-some thousand already to reimburse them for expenses they paid out, and now they're requesting 122,000 for expenses that they've already paid out. Motion by Supervisor Mullen and second by Supervisor McCready to, to approve that resolution. Supervisor Cook, you want a question?
Yeah, I do just want to make a comment. We talked about this at exec. Currently, it sounds like that the Housing Authority was able, or they were able to get a higher grant level. I don't know what that means in terms of dollars. I've heard 7 million. If that's the case, I know they're coming to speak at the next board meeting or the next exec meeting. I'd just like to know what that means in terms of their balance sheet. And do they still need our 3.5 million?
I can't answer that question at this point in time. We're dealing with 122,000 presently.
No, I understand that.
Yep.
But without that information, I don't know if I can support 122,000.
Well, you voted no at exec. That's your prerogative. Any other questions? Supervisor Vaughn.
I guess my concern with this one is when this was originally approved, I believe it was April of 22, maybe. The number we were given was 7 million. That's what this 3.5 was approved on. Since then, the number seems to have jumped to 17 million or something like that. And I have asked a couple of times about them cutting back some of the extra things, brand new 2-car garages, all that kind of stuff, and I haven't seen any effort to reduce the cost. So I think, in my opinion, based on that we were considering this to be a $7 million project, I can't vote to approve this. Just my comment.
Supervisor Nelson, do you have any comments relative to this now? The 7 million, I think, was up to 10 million, and that there's this is really a complicated thing, but it has gone up because the costs have gone up. Supervisor Nelson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, our executive director will be here next month to explain the appropriation that we have been given by WIDA. And so we are about ready to sign the documents that will take us through the program. But the giving that the WIDA has been granted us allows us to reduce our long-term debt. And so the project is scheduled to go forward in the spring. So nothing really has changed other than to say that our long-term debt will come down from 3.8 million down to 2.3 million, but we still the project will still be funded 80% with federal dollars, including the ARPA funds, which are federal dollars.
And these are, you know, this discussion about the 3.5 million is a totally separate deal from what we're talking about here.
Right.
These are $122,000 of expenses that the Housing Authority has already paid out. And, you know, we made this promise a while ago. I'm not saying we can't have that discussion on the 3.5 some other time, but I think they need those funds presently, the 122,000. Supervisor efforts. Bill, you got to unmute yourself. Yeah, he's on. He's marked here as he wanted to speak. Bill, you have to unmute yourself if you need to say something. Lance can't do it. Hell, he's taking his name off the thing. Okay, are there any other questions? Supervisor Cook?
Yes, so just to be clear, we are right now are the only source of funds. They need 122,000, I get that. But are you saying we're the only source of funds? There's no funds available through WIDA or this grant that they received?
Not to reimburse these at this time. I don't think we've signed the loan documents with WIDA yet, have we, Gary? So they don't have another source of funds, no. Other than their general operations, no.
Correct.
Any other questions? Not, let's vote. Okay, that didn't pass.
Wait a minute, is it 2/3 of who's here or 2/3 of
Thirds
the
of 29.
29?
We need 20. It says on my thing, it's passed with 2/3 of full membership, but that's not right because we need 22. Oh, okay. Because we have 21 yes and 5 no and 3 absent.
Yep, so it doesn't pass.
So it doesn't pass. Okay,
Well, it's 2/3 of the 26, right?
2/3 of the 29. 29 divided by 3 times 2. It'll come up to 21 something, I believe. Well, you have the 5 no.
Louis?
Quarters or 2/3?
The absence count as a no vote in this case.
2/3 is only 18.
So you have 21 yes, 5 no, 0 abstain, and 3
Hey,
absent.
maybe
Seems to me.
did I do that wrong? It's 22 might be the 3/4 vote, I'm thinking. 29 divided by 3 times 2 is 19, so we only need 20. All right, so I was wrong. At 2/3 is 20 votes. I believe 3/4 is the 22. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So I reversed. Yeah, so it passed. So this did pass. So, thank you.
At one time, I taught math.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you were here. Okay, do you have the 5 no, just so we know?
Sure. The 5 no were Cook, Efforts, Krug, Conan, and Vaughn. And then we had the 3 absent that were Kuselek, Olson, and Rogers.
Okay, thank you.
So it passed.
It passed, yep. Item number 13, the resolution advocating for an inpatient behavioral health facility for northern Wisconsin. Motion by Supervisor Bob Anderson, second by Supervisor Banks. Anybody have any questions on that in the packet? Okay, seeing none, let's vote. Passed by a majority of 28 yes and 3 absent. 26 yes. Boy, I'm having trouble tonight. Number 14, resolution requesting that the state of Wisconsin in its 2025-27 state biennial budget provide state GPR funding to cover the full non-federal share of MAS, CSP, and crisis services. Again, Jeff had an update and there was a resolution in there. Motion by Supervisor Banks, seconded by Supervisor Gores. Does anybody have any questions on that resolution? Seeing none, let's vote. Supervisor Cook, do you have a question?
No,
Oh, okay, he's voting for it. He's voting yes. Passed by a majority, 26 yes, 3 absent. Thank you. Item number 15, ordinance designating additional portions of county highways as ATV, UTV routes. Motion by Supervisor Turcott, seconded by Supervisor Conan. Does anybody have any questions on that? Supervisor Hanson.
Is that okay with the sheriff?
Yes, it's okay with the highway department and, yep. I at first thought it was the other end of where 20, anyway, forget what I said. Any other questions? If not, let's vote. That passed, 26 yes and 3 absent. Okay, item number 16. This is, I guess, I thought we were going to discuss the committee of the whole and set a date for that, but Jeff has some other ideas.
All right, we're going to go through a presentation. So the first thing Jody's going to put up here is she's going to project, this should be a picture of the campus, and I want to start, can we just have the lights lowered just a smidge? This is a picture of the campus, and I just wanted to start out as perspective so you see that, the campus, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area. So that's our campus looking southwest to northeast. All right, the next thing we're going to show you is the actual what we own. We own about, it's a total of about, I looked at the contract, about 60 some acres, and everything in the purple is owned by Barron County. So you can see everything in purple, and yes, we do cross part of the parking lot of WITC, and we have a long-term agreement with them that it's okay for them to use the parking lot, and we agreed on how to maintain it and everything. The only thing that this doesn't show is that we own 2 parcels of land. If you'd look, I'm going to point here. I'm going to point, if you can see, I can't do it. Nope, nope. I'll go back out. I'll go back out here as soon as this turns on. Go back out here. I want the board to be very aware. We own 2 parcels of land down here. There are 2 parcels of land down here that are owned by the county under the control of the Board of Regents. We swapped land with Rice Lake Weighing up here. We swapped land with Rice Lake Weighing up there. Now, the reason that I tell you that is I asked the campus to put in their permanent file of the minutes of the Board of Regents where Jess Miller and I gave testimony that that land down here will never, ever pass out of existence of ownership of the county. The Board of Regents was not entirely accepting of this land swap until we gave testimony that that land would be held in perpetuity by the county board and only for educational, well, not for that, but it'd be held by the county. So that's a little extra piece here that I always wanted to get out there. So you can see there's some beautiful area. This is actually what I'm pointing at. That was the original airport. This was the original airport for Rice Lake, went like this. This, the property committee will be facing that, discussing some very major improvements to this large ball field here. Brandon Wilger is looking at doing that. He's got some donors who want to, that's great. We want to keep that up.
Is that the Babe Ruth field?
Yes, yep, the Babe Ruth Field. So hang on just a second. I'm going to keep going here. So let's do the campus map. The next one is the campus map. This is what the campus with the buildings. So we're talking tonight, or what's in play here is E and F. E is the student center, which will be basically vacated sometime by February for sure, and the gymnasium. And we don't have a basketball team anymore like we did back in the day. So, all right, let's talk about what we spent on the campus. Here's a spreadsheet. I'm sorry. Yeah, did you get the spreadsheet for the updated expenditures? Can we go to the spreadsheet first? Yep. Want to just show this? This is from Jody. This is what we spent on the campus, what our operating budget is, actual capital improvements, and you know, we put money in the HVAC going back when we updated that went from pneumatic controls to electronic controls, I believe, and some other things. So that's what we spent on the campus over, what, about a decade. The next one's really shocking. What do we have invested in the campus? We've got about $15 million. You slide down, Jody. You can see here it's 15.2 million and about 50% depreciated at a book value of about 8.7 million. But what's even more shocking is the next PDF, which is our insured value. We have it insured for 44 million, and I asked Wendy, I said, Wendy, if anything happened at the campus, could we ever replace the campus for 44 million? She said never. So we have a crown jewel up there. It's a jewel. All right, so the next thing I want to do is go through a PowerPoint, because this is going to tell you where we're at and what's going on. So there's the possibility of, with the student center being vacated, that the Rice Lake Area School District would like to turn that into a K-4 daycare facility. Approximately 100 plus kids, maybe up to 150 kids. The student center is slated to be vacant in early 2025. Rice Lake Area School District, along with the pickleball club, has used the gymnasium at various times. And so there's also the possibility that Northern Star Theater would be interested in renting the Fine Arts building or using the Fine Arts building. So next slide, please.
Jeff?
Yes.
Would the daycare center that be funded by the Rice Lake School District?
Yes, grants and Rice Lake Schools, yes.
Would we get any rent?
No.
The county?
Yes, out of the daycare, yes, there would be a rental, some type of a rental or stipend, possibly to the county, depending on how that cash flows. Or if the Rice Lake School takes it over and we don't have to put any money in it, maybe we do the same thing we did at the Ann Street School. We don't put any money in it, you maintain it. Okay, on June 12th, there was a stakeholder meeting. We discussed the possibility of repurposing the student center to a daycare facility. That was also businesses in the area were there. Myself, Abby, Dave Armstrong, people from the state. Good possibility. In July, I received support from Chancellor Schmidt at Eau Claire, and Abby's in the audience. She can speak up whenever she wants to here. She received support from Chancellor Schmidt on this idea, and he's supportive. He's like, yes, if we can repurpose the student center and Rice Lake Schools wants to use the gymnasium, let's do it. Let's do it. On August 21st, Rice Lake Area School District staff, myself, EDC, campus directors, and others, we met. Rice Lake Schools at that time continued to be interested. Randy Drost addressed the executive committee. He said, I don't want to speak for the board, but at this point, he is supportive. There was a pre-inspection walkthrough completed in early September, and that was very positive. Probably just having to add bathrooms on the main floor, maybe doing a sprinkler on the basement floor, adding some lights or emergency lighting on the first floor, putting up a fence, which we think the fence from the Boys and Girls Club could be repurposed. That would open that up as a K-12, and off we go. Next slide. You know, when we look at the 2.669 million that we received from one bidder, with no contingency. That's concerning to me. 3 million is probably a more accurate estimate. I'm using that number because there's no contingency whatsoever, and you get into something like this, you're gonna find something wrong. You'll find asbestos on a piping. You'll find where, the other time we had problems up there, we found out that they had actually punched light and cement right next to a pipe and had partially cracked the pipe. So, continuing on. Let's go back one. Okay. So what we're talking about here is the Rice Lake Area School District is interested in getting an architect in there, and Abby gave them the schematics of the building today. They are interested in getting an architect in there and looking at repurposing the student center for an education center, a daycare center. They're also interested in using the gymnasium for their purposes. So I thought about having a committee of the whole meet up there. I talked to John about that. As you know, John's very much a book of wisdom. He's like, what are you really going to tell the board? We really don't know much. This is all good information until Rice Lake Schools gets an architect of what it's going to cost. If Dave Armstrong comes up with what grants they're going to get, it's just an idea. So if you were to meet as a committee of the whole, I've been asked, what is the reason for a committee of the whole? Next slide. Well, a committee of the whole allows for questions and answers. You know, the simple solution here is if this board at this tonight's okay with some head nods of continue down this road, staff can determine the next steps. Because we're not going to know anything until an architect goes through it and finds out how much power is there, finds out what you're going to have to cut into that precast concrete, where the bathrooms are going to go, what's the lighting going to cost. So I'm going to ask you, unless there's really strong feelings to have a meeting as a committee of the whole, I'm going to ask you not to. And I'm just going to be really brief. A committee of the whole is a great way to discuss something because Robert's Rules of Order doesn't apply. You can ask as many questions as you want to. You kick ideas around. But it also limits the fact that under a committee of the whole, nobody can make motions. It's only discussion. Then you have a rise and report where you report in your next minutes, your next meeting minutes, you'd write in what you talked about, the 4 or 5 or 6 things that you talked about. That's the upside of a committee of the whole. So with that, questions, concerns, comments?
Supervisor Gores.
Would the daycare center there, would that go as the count for the students for the school district?
I don't know that.
I mean, because that makes a difference on their funding there from the state.
Well,
by a long
Dave
shot.
Armstrong is really kind of the lead on this, and so has been the superintendent at the school. And they said if they classify it differently, you can get a lot more kids and funding for it. And I can't. That's all I can tell. Yeah, it's something educational facility instead of a daycare. So these are things that what Jeff's right. They're kicking us around, and I kind of agree with them. That I wanted to talk about all this with the whole board, but we're actually doing it right now, and we don't have any definitive information at this point in time. So I would agree with what Jeff's
I could waste
saying.
your time on that night, on that day, because we could talk all we want, and schools could come back with the architectural design, say in January, and maybe it's going to cost them $750,000. And that might be the deal breaker. They're not going to do it. I think Supervisor Heller had a question.
Supervisor Heller.
Well, we've discussed this both at economic development and property. It's been ongoing for years, not just for a short time, the need for daycare in Rice Lake and surrounding area, all the different areas. But being that this location is actually beneficial, because there's a lot of manufacturing around, and there's potential buy-in from some of the different businesses, plus it's at the college and the tech. So people that are coming in to go to the college have a concern for daycare. So the location overall is an excellent location, but beyond that, the potential to have the school come in instead creates a completely different situation than a freestanding daycare, trying to generate it, because it is based on an educational facility, that's a daycare. And that is able to access more grants, more funding. And finally, this has so much less to do than when we looked at Ann Street School. Financially, the money that it's going to cost to put into this to make it functional is extremely less. I think there's 2 bathrooms, a couple of doors, and like you said, maybe a sprinkler. So much different, and the cost outlay is going to be different, but the benefits to the county is going to be huge.
One of the things that if I may, Dana, when we met on June 12th, that was one of the comments we got from the businesses, is the location was very important to them, because you've got Quanex, you have Onion Factory, and you have Rice Lake Wing. And that was some of the things that attracted them to this location, is it was close for their employees to drop off.
Supervisor Moen.
I have a question. Now, if Rice Lake utilizes the 2 buildings, would that alter our HVAC layouts that the county is dealing with?
Yes, go ahead, John.
Yes. That's where Steve is wrestling with, and I didn't mention when I was doing the budget, Steve is making phone calls beyond the 2.69 million to see if he can get that price down. He's calling different people and asking them, hey, is the engineer right, or do you have a better idea? So to answer your question, Carol, I believe it would, and that's why the 500,000 is on the and it's a 2.5, because Steve said if we were just to put pack boilers, we could probably put 2 pack boilers for Ritzinger and Meggers. That wouldn't get us air conditioning. We could run the air conditioning off the cold water lines that are coming off the building, off of the physical plant. So that, yes, and then that might give options for Rice Lake, because there's a direct steam line or direct line from the plant to the campus. So that might give Rice Lake the opportunity. Maybe they only fix what they want to fix. We'll do what we want to do, because the leak is outside of the Fine Arts building. That's where the leak was that we patched. So yes, we're trying to pump the brakes a bit.
Supervisor McCready.
I'm just curious, when was the campus actually constructed?
Between 1968 and 1972. And it was also 20% over budget, but we don't talk about that.
So with that, and just moving from a building that was built in, 1958 and was added onto and added onto and added onto, when the hospital was torn down, there were skeletons that were not found until digging was starting. So the animals that you may run into with this HVAC project, not knowing a terrible amount about it yet, your contingency plan projection is probably more accurate than the one that you were given.
Thank you. I will say, though, that that every time that interested people have walked through our campus buildings, they've been way more than impressed about how we've kept them up as a county. So the buildings proper are in really good shape. Yes, they need roofs, but their roofs are 20 years old.
Supervisor Fowler.
Just looking at your map got me thinking, has anybody reached out to anyone at Northwood Technical College to get input from them and potential use, staffing that they have, students they have that might need daycare, other facility uses they might have? Got a law enforcement program there. Could they use the gym? Are they being brought into this discussion at all?
I only know them, I'm going to answer that, Craig. I only know them being brought into the discussion for daycare, and I'm looking at Abby because that's all that I know that's been discussed with them. Not any, I can certainly reach out to them. I'll do it tomorrow.
I think we should reach out.
I don't have to lose any sleep anymore at night,
No.
but if I was in my former job and this was going on and nobody's talking to me, I might be thinking I thought we were partners. I don't know, but there might either be funding sources too that they have. It's a completely different
I
system.
can call John Will tomorrow. I can do that.
John is aware of it, Craig. Yeah.
I talked to John about it on Friday, and he said he's just waiting to see what happens. He said he had some ideas about it, but he was waiting to see what happens first.
Supervisor Cook, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Back to the 3 buildings, Jeff, you're talking about, the student center, the maintenance building, and gymnasium. Those do not need any work in terms of heating and air conditioning, correct?
That
They're
is
hooked to the
correct.
Maintenance building.
Yep, that's correct.
Who is going to be paying for the architect? Is the school paying for the architect to see?
Yes, according to Victor Drost, yes.
they'll pay for that. And then in terms of the lease, and you hit it right on the head. They're very impressed with how we've maintained those buildings. Will the lease be sufficient enough for us to take care of the outside of the buildings? And do we have a guarantee on how they will take care of the inside of the buildings?
Yeah, we haven't got that far on a lease yet, and the lease with the Regents is very old and it's not well written. So we haven't gotten that far. I think first thing we have to do is find out what the architect says. Can they get the money? What does it look like? When do they want to open? And how they want to use the gym. I mean, if we didn't have to put the 2.6 million in it and they were willing to put roofs and doors and fix everything up and we'd have to spend that, I don't know why we wouldn't enter into the same agreement we did with Ann Street School in 1978. If it doesn't cost us anything and they keep up those 3 buildings and we keep up the other 3, it'd be a win.
Maybe. And then I'm with you, Jeff. I don't think we need a committee of the whole meeting.
Supervisor Banks.
Is the college, where are they putting the student center then? If they're using it, that's one question. The second one, in 10 years, if we need these buildings back,
I think
what's the idea?
Well, I think Abby should ask the question about what they're doing with the student center. And I don't know if you look at 10 years, we're not having, John, you project out 10 years, there's no kids being born.
Well,
So you
maybe
can-
they're going to turn or something. I don't know.
Abby, would you like to answer the first question, please?
Absolutely. Abby Fisher, Campus Director at UW Eau Claire, Barron County. The question is, where are the students going? Our current headcount for students taking credits within our building is 100 students taking credits within our building. We have roughly 300 people coming to the campus every week for some sort of class, but we only have about 100 students taking credits with us right now. And so we're able to put all of our classes in Ritzinger Hall, and then of course, I didn't mention this at property, also the band hall and the music, band hall and art studio, because we're using those quite a lot these days. And so it's quite, I've met with faculty in the last week. They're seeing very positive responses to the fact that we have all the classrooms, or most of the classrooms in Ritzinger. The students are getting to know each other better. We have a better sense of community. And so by moving our services from the student center and into Meggers and Ritzinger, I think we're serving our students better. And in the long run, making the space available for potential daycare, I think serves our community better.
Okay, is there anybody who wants to go forward with the committee of the whole at this time with the lack of knowledge that we have? Okay, seeing none, we won't do that at this point in time. Okay, on to item number 617, progress and financial update on the Barron County Highway Facilities Project. There was on page 43 of 44. Me? Yeah, there won't be any voting, so. Yeah. On page 43 of 44, it has that detail. Essentially, nothing's changed since the last month, and we're still, hopefully, not hopefully, we'll be under budget based on the current allocations that we have. Does anybody have any questions relative to that? Okay, item number 18, the ARPA expenditures, that again, that's page 44 of 44. Not a lot has changed there yet, and Jody keeps a good watch on that. Item number 19, report from County Administrator about the aging kitchen financials.
Can you just project those? Jody and I have talked about this. I'll let Jody speak to it, but I consider this basically this project completed and over. Any leftover money goes back to the ARPA funds. I believe we have a small credit or maybe a credit coming that'll go back. We've given you the detail here. The 206,153, that's reduced by the 150,000 that's going to be used for the boilers here to make sure there's enough heat in the new kitchen. And otherwise, the balance returns to the ARPA funds, which Jody will take care of between now and the end of the year. So any questions for Jody or I? That's all I
Seeing
have.
none, how about appointments? Do we have any?
Nope.
Claims, petitions, correspondence, with John, do we didn't have any there? 22, suggestions for future agenda items are listed on the agenda.
And I'd like to add a D, we will give you an update on the campus too. We're working on this rather quickly and we will update you. I'd like to add that. At least we'll have something. If it's nothing more than, we don't know any more than we did last month. We'll just keep you updated on them.
Okay, by unanimous consent, we'll adjourn at 8:40. Thanks.